Samurai Memory Secrets, Ancient Techniques to Unlock a Sharper Mind. Prologue, The Forgotten Art. In the mist-shrouded mountains of feudal Japan, where cherry blossoms fell like snow and ancient temples stood sentinel over valleys of bamboo, there existed a secret known only to the warrior class, the samurai. This secret wasn't a sword technique or battle strategy. It was something far more powerful, the art of perfect memory. The samurai understood what modern science is only beginning to confirm, that memory is not merely the passive storage of information, but an active skill that can be trained, sharpened, and mastered like any martial art. They developed techniques so effective that a samurai could memorize the layout of an entire castle after a single viewing, recall conversations word for word years later, and internalize thousands of strategic principles that guided their decisions in the chaos of combat. These techniques were passed down through generations, taught in the same rigorous manner as swordsmanship and archery. They were considered essential to the samurai's duty, their honor, and their survival. A samurai with a weak memory was a liability, unable to remember the intricate protocols of court, the complex relationships between clans, or the lessons learned from past battles. But when the samurai class was abolished in the late 19th century, much of this knowledge was scattered. Some techniques survived in martial arts schools, some in Zen monasteries, and some in the oral traditions of old families. Most, however, were lost to time. Until now. This is the story of how these ancient memory techniques were rediscovered, tested by modern science, and adapted for the challenges of our information-saturated age. It's a journey that spans centuries and continents, from the training halls of medieval Japan to the neuroscience laboratories of today. More than that, it's a practical guide, a way for you to unlock the same mental sharpness that allowed samurai to perform seemingly superhuman feats of memory and concentration. The samurai didn't have access to books, computers, or smartphones. They couldn't Google information or store contacts in a digital database. Everything they needed to know had to be carried in their minds, ready for instant recall. In many ways, this limitation forced them to develop cognitive abilities that we've lost in our age of external memory aids. But what if we could reclaim those abilities? What if we could combine ancient wisdom with modern understanding to create a memory system more powerful than either alone? That's the promise of samurai memory techniques, not nostalgia for a bygone era, but a practical toolkit for navigating the cognitive demands of modern life. The foundation of samurai memory. The first and most fundamental principle of samurai memory training was called zanshin, a term that translates roughly as remaining mind or lingering spirit. But these translations don't capture its full meaning. Zanshin was a state of relaxed alertness, a quality of attention that the samurai cultivated from their earliest training. It meant being fully present in each moment, aware of everything around you without being distracted by internal chatter or external concerns. Imagine a samurai standing in a dojo, sword raised, facing an opponent. In that moment, he is not thinking about breakfast or what he'll do tomorrow or whether his technique is correct. He is simply there, completely present, completely aware. His mind is like a mirror, reflecting everything without clinging to anything. This state of consciousness is the foundation of superior memory, and modern neuroscience explains why. The science behind presence. When we're distracted or only half paying attention, our brains don't properly encode memories. The hippocampus, the brain region responsible for forming new memories, requires focused attention to do its job effectively. If your attention is divided between multiple tasks, or if you're mentally rehearsing what you're going to say next, instead of listening to what's being said now, your brain simply doesn't create strong memory traces. Research by neuroscientist Dr. Adam Gazziley at the University of California, San Francisco has shown that our ability to form memories degrades dramatically when our attention is split. In one study, participants who tried to memorize information while also performing another task showed memory retention rates 50% lower than those who focused on memorization alone. The samurai understood this intuitively. Their training emphasized single-pointed concentration, the ability to give complete attention to one thing at a time. This wasn't just philosophical or spiritual training, it was practical cognitive enhancement. The practice, breath-counting meditation. The primary technique samurai used to develop Zanshin was breath-counting meditation, a practice that originated in Zen Buddhism and was refined in the martial training halls. Here's how to practice it. Step 1. Find a quiet space. Sit in a comfortable position with your back straight, but not rigid. You can sit cross-legged on a cushion, in a chair with your feet flat on the floor, or even in the traditional seiza position, kneeling with your buttocks resting on your heels. The key is to be alert but relaxed. Step 2. Set your intention. Close your eyes or maintain a soft, downward gaze. Take 3 deep breaths, and with each exhale, consciously release tension from your body. Set the intention to be fully present for the duration of the practice. Step 3. Begin counting. Start counting your breaths. Inhale naturally, and as you exhale, silently count 1. On the next exhale, count 2. Continue up to 10, then start over at 1. If you lose count or your mind wanders, simply return to 1 and begin again without judgment. Step 4. Notice without engaging. Thoughts will arise. This is normal and expected. The practice isn't to stop thinking, but to notice thoughts without getting caught up in them. Imagine thoughts as clouds passing through the sky of your awareness. Acknowledge them, then return to counting your breath. Step 5. Practice daily. Start with just 5 minutes per day. The samurai would practice for much longer, sometimes an hour or more, but building the habit is more important than duration. 5 minutes of consistent daily practice will yield better results than an occasional hour-long session. The memory benefits of mindfulness. A 2013 study published in Psychological Science found that just 2 weeks of mindfulness training improved participants' working memory capacity and reading comprehension scores. Another study from Harvard University showed that regular meditation practice actually increases the density of gray matter in the hippocampus, the brain's memory center. But the benefits go beyond just structural brain changes. When you develop the ability to be truly present, you naturally remember more because you're actually experiencing life instead of sleepwalking through it. How many times have you driven somewhere and arrived with no memory of the journey? How many conversations have you had where you couldn't recall what was said because you were thinking about something else? Zanshin training combats this mental autopilot. It teaches you to be where you are, doing what you're doing, with full attention and awareness. And when you're fully present, memory formation happens naturally and effortlessly. Advanced practice, sensory awareness. Once you've established a basic meditation practice, you can expand your Zanshin training to include sensory awareness exercises. The samurai used these techniques to sharpen their perceptiveness and create richer, more detailed memories. The 5 senses exercise. Spend 5 minutes focusing exclusively on each sense. Sight, sit in a room and notice everything you can see. Don't just glance around, really look. Notice colors, shapes, textures, the play of light and shadow. Try to see details you've never noticed before. Sound, close your eyes and listen. How many different sounds can you identify? Traffic, birds, the hum of electronics, your own breathing. Notice how sounds have different qualities: pitch, volume, rhythm. Touch, feel the sensation of your body in contact with the chair or floor. Notice the texture of your clothing against your skin. Feel the temperature of the air on your face and hands. Smell, what can you smell? Even in a seemingly odorless room, there are subtle scents if you pay attention. Taste, notice the taste in your mouth. Even without eating anything, your mouth has sensations and subtle flavors. This exercise does 2 things. First, it trains your attention to be more acute and detailed. Second, it creates what memory researchers call encoding specificity. The more sensory details you encode with a memory, the easier it is to recall later. The samurai would practice sensory awareness constantly, even during mundane activities. Walking through a garden, they would note every flower, every stone, every rustle of leaves. Drinking tea, they would be fully aware of the temperature, the flavor, the texture of the cup in their hands. This constant practice of detailed observation created a baseline of heightened awareness that made their memories extraordinarily vivid and accurate. Bringing Zanshin into daily life. The real power of Zanshin emerges when you bring it into everyday activities. The samurai didn't just meditate in a temple, they carried their meditative awareness into every aspect of life. Try this for 1 week. Mindful eating. For at least 1 meal per day, eat with full attention. No phone, no TV, no book, just you and your food. Notice colors, textures, flavors, chew slowly, be fully present with the experience of eating. Mindful walking. When you walk somewhere, really walk. Feel each footstep. Notice your surroundings. Instead of being lost in thought or staring at your phone, be aware of the physical sensation of walking and the environment around you. Mindful listening. In conversations, practice listening with complete attention. Don't plan what you're going to say next. Don't judge or analyze what the person is saying. Just listen, fully and completely. You'll be amazed at how much more you remember from conversations when you're truly present. Mindful tasks. Choose one routine task each day: washing dishes, brushing your teeth, making coffee, and do it with complete attention. Notice every sensation, every movement. Transform a mundane chore into a practice of presence. The samurai called this ikigo iki, one time, one meeting. Each moment is unique and will never come again. When you approach life with this awareness, you naturally create stronger, more vivid memories because you're actually living your life instead of merely existing through it. The story of Miyamoto Musashi. To understand how powerful Zanshin could be in practice, consider the legendary swordsman Miyamoto Musashi. Born in 1584, Musashi fought in over 60 duels and was never defeated. But his greatest victory wasn't won with a sword, it was won with perfect awareness. In his most famous duel, Musashi faced Sasaki Kajiro, a master swordsman known for his lightning-quick technique called swallow cut. The duel was set for 8 a.m. on a remote island. Musashi arrived 3 hours late. This wasn't rudeness, it was strategy. Musashi understood that Kajiro would be growing increasingly angry and agitated, losing his mental composure. When Musashi finally arrived, he had carved a wooden sword from an oar on the boat ride over. Kajiro, enraged by the perceived insult, drew his sword and charged. In that moment, Musashi's mind was perfectly clear, absolute Zanshin. He saw everything: the angle of Kajiro's attack, the slight overextension caused by anger, the exact moment to strike. With one blow of his wooden sword, he ended the duel. Later, in his book The Book of Five Rings, Musashi wrote, "Perceive that which cannot be seen with the eye." This was Zanshin, a state of awareness so complete that you notice details others miss, remember things others forget, and see opportunities others overlook. You may not be fighting duels, but you face your own challenges every day, remembering important information, staying focused in meetings, catching crucial details, making good decisions under pressure. Zanshin training can help you handle all of these with greater skill. The method of Losai. The second major technique in samurai memory training was based on spatial memory, our brain's natural ability to remember locations and navigate through space. The samurai adapted an ancient Greek technique called the method of Losai or memory palace, but they gave it their own unique twist based on Japanese architecture and cultural references. The basic principle is simple but powerful. Our brains evolved to remember physical spaces with remarkable accuracy. You can probably remember the layout of your childhood home in perfect detail, even if you haven't been there in decades. You can navigate through it in your mind, remembering where every door was, where the furniture was placed, what pictures hung on the walls. The samurai realized they could exploit this natural ability to remember any kind of information by mentally placing it in a familiar location. The historical origins. The method of Losai was first documented in ancient Rome, where orators used it to deliver hours-long speeches without notes. The story goes that a Greek poet named Simonides discovered the technique after a tragic accident. Simonides had just delivered a poem at a banquet and stepped outside when the roof of the building collapsed, killing everyone inside and crushing their bodies beyond recognition. But Simonides found he could identify each body by remembering where each person had been sitting. He realized that our memory for locations is remarkably precise and could be used to remember any type of information. The technique traveled through history, used by medieval scholars to memorize entire books, by Renaissance thinkers to organize vast bodies of knowledge, and eventually to Japan, where it was refined by Zen monks and adopted by the samurai class. Creating your first memory palace. Let's build a simple memory palace using a location you know well, your current home. Step 1. Choose your palace. Your home is an excellent starting point because you know it intimately. Later, you can create additional palaces using other familiar locations, your workplace, your childhood school, a relative's house, or even a route you walk regularly. Step 2. Define a clear route. Mentally walk through your home following a specific route. For example, enter through the front door. Go to the living room. Move to the kitchen. Enter the dining room. Go up the stairs. Enter the bathroom. Enter your bedroom. And so on. The key is to always follow the same route in the same order. This creates a structured framework that your brain can reliably navigate. Step 3. Identify specific locations. Along your route, identify specific locations where you'll place memories. These should be distinct, memorable spots. The coat rack by the door. The coffee table in the living room. The refrigerator in the kitchen. The dining table. The bathroom mirror. The bed in your bedroom, etc. Start with 10-15 locations. As you become more skilled, you can add more. Step 4. Place information using vivid imagery. This is where the samurai technique differs from the basic method of loci. The samurai emphasized creating mental images that engaged all senses and often contained action or emotion. Let's say you want to remember a shopping list: milk, eggs, bread, cheese, apples, chicken, rice, coffee, butter, and lettuce. At your front door, imagine a cow standing there, spurting milk everywhere. Make it absurd. Maybe the cow is wearing a hat and mooing loudly. The more unusual and vivid the image, the better you'll remember it. At your coat rack, picture enormous eggs hanging where coats should be. They're giant, colorful, and wobbling as if they might fall. On your coffee table, imagine a loaf of bread the size of the table itself, still warm and steaming. In your refrigerator, picture it completely stuffed with wheels of cheese, so much cheese that it bursts open when you open the door. You get the idea. Each item gets placed at a specific location using a memorable, multisensory, and often ridiculous mental image. Step 5. Walk through your palace. To recall the information, simply walk through your memory palace in your mind, visiting each location in order. The images you place there will come back to you, along with the information they represent. The samurai twist, incorporating movement and story. The samurai enhanced the memory palace technique by incorporating physical movement and narrative structure. They didn't just place static images in locations, they created action sequences that flowed from one location to the next. For example, using the shopping list above, a samurai might create this narrative. I enter my home and a cow kicks down the door, spraying milk everywhere. I duck past the coat rack where giant eggs are falling, nearly hitting my head. I rush to the coffee table where a massive loaf of bread is rising like a volcano, threatening to consume the room. I flee to the kitchen where the refrigerator explodes with cheese wheels that roll after me like boulders. I leap over them and grab a ladder made of red apples to climb to safety. And so on. By creating a flowing story with action and emotion, you engage more of your brain in the encoding process. Narrative memory is one of the most powerful types of memory humans have. It's how we've passed down knowledge for thousands of years before writing was invented. The science of spatial memory. Modern neuroscience has validated the effectiveness of the memory palace technique. Brain imaging studies show that memory champions, people who can memorize the order of multiple decks of cards or hundreds of random numbers, activate their spatial memory regions when performing these feats, even though the information itself isn't spatial. A landmark study published in Neuron in 2017 found that after just 6 weeks of memory palace training, ordinary people showed brain activity patterns similar to memory champions. Even more remarkably, these improvements persisted for at least 4 months after training ended. The reason the technique works so well comes down to how memories are stored in the brain. The hippocampus, your brain's memory center, contains specialized cells called place cells and grid cells that create a mental map of your environment. These cells are always active and always encoding spatial information. By piggybacking abstract information onto this spatial framework, you're leveraging one of your brain's most fundamental and automatic processes. Building multiple palaces for different purposes. The samurai didn't rely on just one memory palace. They created multiple mental structures for different types of information, just as a castle might have different buildings for different purposes. Here are some palaces you might create. The Knowledge Palace. Use this for long-term information you want to retain, historical dates, foreign language vocabulary, important facts from your field of study. The Task Palace. Create a palace specifically for remembering daily tasks and to-dos. Each morning, mentally walk through this palace and place your tasks for the day at specific locations. The People Palace. For remembering names, faces, and biographical information about people you meet. At each location, place a vivid image that represents the person and includes details about them. The Speech Palace. If you need to give presentations or speeches, create a palace where each location represents a section of your speech. Ancient Roman orators used this technique to deliver hours-long speeches without notes. The Book Palace. When reading important books, create a palace for each book where major concepts are placed at different locations. This allows you to mentally walk through a book's contents long after you've read it. The Tale of the 47 Ronin. The most famous story in Japanese history, the Tale of the 47 Ronin, demonstrates how samurai used memory palaces in practice. After their lord was forced to commit ritual suicide, 47 samurai became Ronin, masterless warriors. They vowed to avenge their master by killing the court official responsible for his death. But this official, Lord Kira, was well protected and highly suspicious of any samurai. The Ronin, led by Oishi Yoshio, scattered and pretended to give up their warrior ways. Oishi himself became a drunk, frequenting brothels and acting dishonorably, all to convince Kira's spies that he was no threat. But in secret, Oishi was memorizing everything about Kira's mansion, the layout, the guard schedules, the locations of weapons, the routines of the household. He couldn't take notes or make maps, as these would be discovered. Everything had to be held in his memory. He created an elaborate memory palace of Kira's mansion, walking through it mentally every day, refining the details, planning the attack. He shared this mental map with the other Ronin through careful description, helping them each build the same palace in their minds. On a snowy night in December 1702, nearly 2 years after their master's death, the 47 Ronin struck. They attacked Kira's mansion with perfect coordination, each warrior knowing exactly where to go, exactly what to do. The attack was flawless. They found Kira hiding in a coal shed and gave him the opportunity to die honorably by his own hand. When he refused, they killed him and placed his head on their master's grave. The Ronin then turned themselves in. They were sentenced to die by ritual suicide, an honorable death for samurai. Their story became legendary, celebrated to this day as the ultimate example of loyalty and honor. But what's often overlooked is the role memory played in their success. Without being able to write anything down, Without modern communication tools, they coordinated a complex military operation through nothing but mental discipline and memory techniques. Advanced technique, the journey method. A variation the samurai particularly favored was using journeys rather than static buildings. They would mentally travel a familiar route, perhaps the path from their home to the daimyo's castle or a route through the mountains, and place information along the way. This technique has several advantages. Natural sequential order. Journeys have a built-in beginning, middle, and end, making them perfect for remembering ordered information. Unlimited length. Unlike a building which has a finite number of rooms, a journey can be extended indefinitely. Rich environmental details. Outdoor journeys naturally include more varied sensory information, whether landscapes, sounds, which provides more hooks for your memories. Physical practice. You can actually walk your journey route while reviewing information, combining physical movement with mental rehearsal. Try creating a journey palace using a walk you take regularly, your commute to work, a path through a park, the route you jog. Place information along the route and then physically walk it while reviewing what you've memorized. The samurai would often practice this technique during their morning walks, reviewing tactical information, poetry, or philosophical teachings as they moved through physical space. Memory palace maintenance. Like any mental tool, memory palaces require maintenance. The samurai understood that memories fade without reinforcement, so they developed systematic review protocols. The spaced repetition schedule. Review your palace immediately after creating it. Review again after 1 day. Review after 3 days. Review after 1 week. Review after 2 weeks. Review after 1 month. Review after 3 months. This spacing pattern, which modern research has confirmed as optimal for long-term retention, ensures that information moves from short-term to long-term memory efficiently. The elaboration technique. Each time you review your palace, add more detail to your mental images, notice new aspects of the locations, refine the stories connecting your images. This process of elaboration strengthens the memory traces and creates multiple retrieval pathways. The teaching method. The most powerful form of review is teaching. If you can mentally walk through your palace and explain the information it contains to an imaginary student, you'll reinforce the memories more effectively than passive review alone. The samurai would regularly test each other, challenging fellow warriors to recall information from their memory palaces. This social aspect added motivation and accountability to the practice. Learning from martial forms. Kata is the Japanese term for formal practice patterns in martial arts, choreographed sequences of movements practiced repeatedly until they become automatic. A karate practitioner might perform the same kata thousands of times over years of training, refining each movement until it requires no conscious thought. The samurai applied this same principle of systematic, structured repetition to mental training. They understood that memory isn't just about encoding information once. It's about reinforcing that information through strategic repetition until it becomes permanently embedded. But not all repetition is created equal. Mindlessly reviewing information over and over is far less effective than strategic, spaced repetition that challenges your brain to actively retrieve information. The forgetting curve. To understand why the samurai's repetition methods work, we need to understand the forgetting curve, first described by German psychologist Hermann Ebbinghaus in 1885. Ebbinghaus discovered that we forget information rapidly after learning it, without any reinforcement. After 20 minutes, we retain only about 60% of what we learned. After 1 day, we retain about 30%. After 1 week, we retain about 20%. After 1 month, we retain less than 10%. However, each time we review information right before we're about to forget it, we reset the forgetting curve at a higher level. After several strategically timed reviews, the information moves into long-term memory where it can be retained for years or even a lifetime with minimal reinforcement. The samurai didn't know the neuroscience behind this, but they discovered the principle through centuries of practical experience training warriors. The three-stage memory kata. The samurai developed a three-stage approach to memorization that modern science has confirmed as highly effective. Stage 1. Intense initial learning shu. In the first stage, you focus intensely on the information you want to memorize. This isn't passive reading or listening, it's active engagement with the material. Techniques for intense initial learning. Multisensory encoding. Engage as many senses as possible. Read the information aloud, auditory, write it by hand, kinesthetic, create visual representations, visual. The more neural pathways you create, the stronger the memory. Elaborative interrogation. Don't just accept information passively. Ask yourself questions. Why is this true? How does this connect to what I already know? What are the implications? When might I use this? Self-explanation. After encountering new information, close your eyes and explain it to yourself in your own words. This forces you to process deeply rather than just recognize. The Feynman technique. Named after physicist Richard Feynman, this method involves explaining the concept as if teaching it to a child. If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. The samurai would typically spend 30–60 minutes in this initial intensive learning phase, completely focused on the material with no distractions. Stage 2. Progressive challenges, ha. In the second stage, you test yourself on the material under increasingly difficult conditions. This is the mental equivalent of practicing kata in the rain, in darkness, or on uneven ground, adding challenges that force deeper mastery. Progressive challenge techniques. Delayed recall. Wait several hours after initial learning, then try to recall the information without looking at your notes. The difficulty of retrieval actually strengthens the memory. Mixed practice. Instead of reviewing one topic repeatedly, mix different topics together. This interleaving feels harder but produces better long-term retention. Generation over recognition. Don't just reread your notes. Cover them up and generate the information from memory. Then check your accuracy. This active recall is far more powerful than passive review. Environmental variation. Study and review in different locations, at different times of day, in different mental states. This prevents your memory from becoming overly dependent on specific contextual cues. Teaching others. Explain the information to someone else, or imagine explaining it to an audience. This forces you to organize information clearly and identify gaps in your understanding. The samurai would practice this stage over several days, with review sessions spaced increasingly further apart. Stage 3. Unconscious competence, Rai. In the final stage, the information has moved into long-term memory and can be accessed automatically without conscious effort. This is equivalent to how a martial artist can perform kata movements without thinking about them. At this stage, you maintain the memory through periodic review. Monthly or quarterly reviews keep information fresh without requiring intensive study. Practical application. Actually using the information in real-world contexts provides natural reinforcement. Connection building. Regularly connecting the information to new things, your learning expands and strengthens the memory network. Creative elaboration. Finding new ways to think about or apply the information keeps it dynamic and accessible. The samurai understood that reaching this stage of automatic recall was essential for information that might need to be accessed in high-pressure situations, battle strategies, protocols, important relationships between clans. The power of retrieval practice. Modern research has overwhelmingly confirmed what the samurai knew intuitively. Testing yourself, actively retrieving information from memory, is far more effective for long-term retention than simply reviewing information passively. A 2006 study by psychologists Roediger and Karpik demonstrated this dramatically. They had students learn information and then either review it repeatedly or test themselves on it. After 1 week, the students who'd tested themselves retained 50% more information than those who'd only reviewed. The samurai built this principle into their training through regular challenges and competitions. Students would test each other, masters would quiz students, and warriors would regularly demonstrate their knowledge in formal settings. This constant retrieval practice ensured that important information remained accessible. Creating your personal memory kata. To apply samurai repetition principles to your own learning. Design your practice schedule. Day 1, intensive initial learning, 30-60 minutes. Day 1, evening, first review session, 15 minutes. Day 2, second review session, 15 minutes. Day 4, third review session, 15 minutes. Day 7, fourth review session, 15 minutes. Day 14, fifth review session, 10 minutes. Day 30, sixth review session, 10 minutes. Day 90, maintenance review, 10 minutes. Structure each review session. Begin with a brief meditation to focus your mind, 2-3 minutes. Attempt to recall the information without looking at your notes. Write down everything you remember, 5-7 minutes. Check your recall against the original material. Note what you remembered correctly and what you forgot, 2-3 minutes. Focus particularly on the items you forgot. These are the weak spots that need reinforcement, 3-5 minutes. End with a final complete review of all the material, 2-3 minutes. Track your progress. The samurai kept detailed records of their training. You should too. Create a simple tracking system. Date of learning session. Material covered. Initial comprehension level, 110. Dates of each review session. Accuracy of recall at each session. Notes on what was difficult. Date when material reached automatic recall. This tracking serves multiple purposes. It keeps you accountable, shows you progress over time, and helps you identify which types of material or which techniques work best for you. The role of sleep in memory consolidation. One aspect of memory the samurai understood through observation, and which modern neuroscience has now confirmed, is the critical role of sleep in memory formation. During sleep, particularly during deep sleep and REM sleep, your brain actively processes the day's experiences, consolidating important information and discarding irrelevant details. Studies using brain imaging have shown that the same neural patterns activated during learning are replayed during sleep. Essentially, your brain is practicing what you learned while you sleep. The samurai made sleep discipline a core part of their training. They typically maintained strict sleep schedules, ensuring adequate rest for both physical and mental recovery. They also understood the value of pre-sleep review. The pre-sleep review technique. Before going to bed, spend 10-15 minutes reviewing the most important information you want to remember from the day. Don't try to memorize new material during this time, just review what you've already learned. This primes your brain to process this information during sleep. Multiple studies have shown that information reviewed before sleep is remembered better than information reviewed at other times of day, precisely because of sleep's consolidation effects. The samurai would often review the day's lessons, strategic information, or martial techniques in the hour before sleep, then drift off knowing their unconscious mind would continue the training work. The web of memory. The fourth principle of samurai memory training was based on association, the understanding that memories don't exist in isolation but are connected in vast networks. The stronger and more numerous the connections, the easier it is to recall information. Think of your memory as a vast spider web. Each piece of information is a point on the web, connected to other points by threads. When you try to recall something, you're following these threads from what you already know to what you're trying to remember. The more threads connecting to a piece of information, the more ways you have to access it. The samurai developed elaborate systems for creating these connections, weaving new information into existing knowledge structures. The principle of meaningful connection. Not all associations are equally strong. Random connections, like linking Apple to Tuesday just because they both appeared in a sentence, create weak memory traces. But meaningful connections, based on understanding, emotion, or personal relevance, create powerful pathways. The samurai emphasized 3 types of meaningful association. Logical association, connecting information based on cause and effect, similarity, contrast, or hierarchical relationships. For example, understanding how military strategies relate to each other based on terrain types or enemy formations. Emotional association, linking information to emotional experiences, makes it more memorable. The samurai would often associate tactical lessons with the emotions of specific battles, the fear before combat, the exhilaration of victory, the sorrow of defeat. Personal association, connecting new information to your own life experiences, interests, or existing knowledge. This is why you easily remember information about topics you're passionate about. It's densely interconnected with your personal experience. The technique of conceptual mapping. One powerful association technique the samurai used was creating mental maps of relationships between concepts. In modern terms, we might call these mind maps or concept maps. Here's how to create a conceptual map. Step 1. Identify the central concept. Write or visualize the main topic in the center. For example, if you're learning about military strategy, strategy might be your central concept. Step 2. Create main branches. Identify 7 major subtopics that branch directly from the central concept. For strategy, these might be offensive tactics, defensive tactics, terrain advantages, psychological warfare, resource management, intelligence gathering, and retreat strategies. Step 3. Add details to each branch. From each major branch, create smaller branches with specific details.